I'm Drake. Welcome to Working Dragon Mystic, where we discuss real, metaphysical, and occult knowledge so you can manifest real and tangible results in your life. This week, we're going to continue our Mage Minded series with a really interesting topic a lot of you have been asking me about, and that's a philosophical mage's look at the Ten Commandments. I think this is going to be a tricky one, and we'll see if we can stay out of trouble. But before we get into this, I want to remind everyone that Working Dragon Mystic has a online community and an online school. The online community you can join for free. Great place to meet new people, chat, share ideas. If you wish to support our channel and the work we do, you can become a supporter at the community for just $10. Loads of perks. You get free access to live workshops. It also comes with access to a few of the courses at the online school, supporter only section, giveaway, monthly spell working. The monthly spell working is worth $25, is normally what I would do for spell working. So that's a huge value in and of itself. And workshops are usually around $10 to $15. So you can see it pays for itself very easily. But that being said, if you're just interested in some of the online courses like Dragon Magic 101, 102, Evocation, the meditation course. You can also find the online school over there. If you're interested, go to workingdragonmystic.com. You'll find links to both of them, or just check below the video notes. You'll see links there as well. All right, now let's get into this. So first off, why would I do this? Why would I actually talk about this? Yes, I said some people's asked me about it. And I have mentioned the concept of considering doing it during a magical coffee hour before. And when I did, a lot of people were really excited about this concept. And I've been thinking about it. And I've had 4 different teachers in my lifetime to tell me anytime I look at something, anytime I ponder it or meditate on it, look at it from the mundane view, look at it from the spiritual view, look at it from the religious view, in order to try and understand it in its entirety, if it has a spiritual or religious view. Some things don't, some things do. Um, and they said pursue the philosophical of it and understand how it applies to you and the world, but also seek to try and understand the views of others in so doing. Now, this came from different teachers. One was a Christian, true. One was a Catholic priest. We called him Padre. The other 2 were not. One was actually an atheist and one was pagan. And I've applied this to a lot of things in my life. The Havamal, for example, is one. But I always try to look at the root of the lesson, right? And these are things I've seen my whole life. You know, I grew up, they were everywhere. Even before I knew what religion was, they were everywhere. And I've actually heard a few people say that they are threatening. And I've never found them threatening, but that's fine. Everybody's welcome to their own opinion. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to try and go through these, and we're going to try and discuss a mage's viewpoint, perhaps a philosophical viewpoint of these, and do they apply? Could they apply? Could they be useful? And to whom, right? Those are the things we're going to try and look at, all right? Now, first off, we are going to be stripping away the religion and the dogma. Let's be honest, I think for the most part, the religion and dogma side of the Ten Commandments has been done to death. And as mages, very few of us actually really worry too much about the religious dogma of it. Not to say there aren't Christian mages, there definitely are. All right, so anytime, let's look at how we're going to view some of this for a second. First off, the word God. God is mentioned in a lot of these, and I think we need to understand that. Now, if you are a Christian, God has a very clear meaning, Buddha, you know, and there's a lot of pagans who God could easily mean and represent Odin. They could represent Thor. You could even represent a goddess, Freya, Hel, Hecate, Gaia. There's a lot of ways you can interpret that from a spiritual or religious view. And I think that is perfectly fine. I have gone through and read these in that context before. Yeah, so I don't think that would be too much of an issue. But that, again, would be for you to decide. However, in a non-dogmatic or spiritual viewpoint, the way I'm viewing this is I'm looking at the concept or ideal of that word, which could mean a focus on good, happy life seeking to live, to be the best you that you can be and in harmony with the world around you, right? When most people are talking about something spiritual or divine, that's kind of the concept they're looking at. They're looking at what is good, what is in harmony, what allows you to live well with the world around you. And some religions may have lost track of that. I don't know. That's a personal opinion for everyone. We all got our own. But let's take that concept, that general concept, not the entity, not the individual, but the concept of living in harmony, being a good person with the world around you when we use that word here. And of course, you can't go through these and you can't talk about the Ten Commandments without the word sin. Now, sin, of course, we know the dogmatic view of it, and most practitioners generally think of it bullshit, especially left-hand practitioners. A lot of left-hand practitioners actually go out of their way to embrace it. In the counter dogmatic view. But another view of sin, if you were to do some research and look it up, would then be if God is, harmony and balance and living well and being in harmony and living well with the world around you, sin would then be anything, habit or behavior or choice that you make that prevents you from doing just that and stops others from doing that. So if you're stopping yourself from living a good life or being in harmony or stopping others from doing that, that would be how sin would be defined in this context philosophically, correct? All right. Now, those two things were actually the hardest two things to actually sit down and get a little bit of a definition on. Before I dove into this, obviously, we've all heard the Ten Commandments. Well, most people, I think, have heard the Ten Commandments. And some of them have heard parts of them. Some haven't heard the full commandment. I've actually seen that in a lot of cases. But I wanted to do something special for this. And I actually got some kickback from some colleagues. One I wanted to do, because I had a colleague that literally told me I need to sit down and basically teleprompter this entire video so there's no mistakes. I literally verbatim can just read what I'm saying. And he's like, it's too controversial of a topic. You need to make sure it's teleprompted. You can't just speak from the heart the way you normally do. And I thought about it. I mean, it is. I get his point, but at the same time, that's not me. I always speak from the heart in my videos. I will do bullet point notes, but I will speak from the heart. And I thought about it and thought about it. You know what? I'm going to do just that. But I knew I was going to need some notes to make sure I didn't miss anything specific. And I wanted to up that just a little bit to make a point. So I set 2 alarms. Anytime I was to research a commandment, I set 2 alarms, a 5-minute alarm and a 10-minute alarm. And I was going to do some basic Google research for 5 minutes to try and get the information that I need. Because a lot of people throw at me, I ain't got the time to sit there and dive into this theological study and break this down. It'd be nice if we had that kind of time. Okay, I ain't got a lot of time in my life. I really don't. But I can still do some research quickly. Research does not have to take hours and days and years. It really does not. And on all these, the first alarm was just that I wanted 5 minutes of research. If I hit a particular tricky one, I would push no further than 10. I'll be honest with you, none of these at the end did I push that 10-minute alarm. And I still found a lot, and I do mean a lot, to get this conversation started and something to think about. And if you don't want to think about it, if you're not interested, that's cool. I get that. I don't blame you. There's a lot of people. But, I am a big believer in taking time to consider and think and ponder and see a larger view of the entirety. So here we go. First one. The first one's pretty straightforward. I think this is one a lot of people have issues with. You shall have no other gods before me. Well, let's be honest, it's put no God before him. This has also been seen as not to allow anyone or anything to become important or become more important in your life. If God and his teachings or wisdom are in theory meant to help one lead a good and happy life, then the foundational ideal teachings to not to prioritize anything in life that works against your happiness would kind of hold up, right? So that's in theory. Now, a lot of people point out this does not state that you can't have any other gods, though it has been interpreted that way a few times. It just says none before them. And honestly, you think about it, I know a lot of people who do have patron deities. They are the prime deity in their practice. In a lot of ways, that's the same thing here, if you really wanted to consider it. But at the same time, we also see this a lot when we talk about self empowerment and self mastery, as we have to let go of bad habits or ways of doing things, and sometimes sadly, and very sadly, friends, to better our path in our lives and our to reach our goals. In that case, when it said when we are saying thou shalt put no other gods before me, in a lot of way you are putting yourself in that divine position that I will not value or put importance on anything more than myself. And therefore, you're not putting yourself down, you're not downgrading yourself. But at the same time, again, when we're talking about that happiness, that living in balance, that's also self checking that ego, right? You can't put yourself so high above everyone else, you're looking down on them, right? You put nothing before you, but you don't get that ego, right? And I think that's actually a pretty interesting one, especially for self mastery and self empowerment. You really got to look at yourself as genuinely meaningful, genuinely important. And in a lot of ways, you got to view yourself as your own God, your own creator, because you are trying to create a life for yourself. Um, for those who say, well, this is going to come in conflict if, I am Christian or if I do have a patron deity. No, no. If you still wish to put that patron on that pedestal, you absolutely can. But again, when we're looking at the world, don't put yourself below it. Always put yourself there. You're still there. In my case, when I work with any entity, I don't really do patron. I view them as equals, even with me, regardless of the entity. And if an entity has problems with that, I don't work with them. It's pretty much that simple for me. But that's not for everyone. But that is a good quick snippet on how that one would go, right? We can't spend too long. And of course, if you've got questions, let me know. I'm also going to pull this over into a magical coffee hour to continue the discussion because I know there will be people who have thoughts and questions to go deeper. So I want to make sure it's in a coffee hour. So yeah, do remember magical coffee hours live over at the Working Dragon Mystic community. Because, well, for whatever reason, our live streaming on Sundays is not working anymore. So the next one is you should not make for yourself a carved image. This is also, carved image, carven image, or sculpted image of a god is some, different phrasings of it, but it's generally, some people say craven image, but it's carved image. Consider the how would you think of this? Okay, so this is one where I actually had to, I this one was tricky, it really was, but it was really interesting in the stuff I've turned up because in a lot of ways this one never made a whole hell of a lot of sense to me. But when I was doing some research, I found something, and it's like, how have I not seen this before, right? Consider the persecution of the Hebrews and later Christians. Some feel this advice helped avoid these issues. And I know many pagans who follow this in their life. And what do I mean by that? They literally didn't keep symbolism or images of divinity of any kind. Whether it's their old life, whether it's their current life, they just didn't advertise it. In a lot of ways, this is kind of the don't talk about religion, it'll start a fight. I mean, like my family kind of has this rule at holidays, don't talk about politics and don't talk about religion. It will start a fight. And in a lot of ways, I see this. And I do know a lot of pagans who purposely do not wear any jewelry or any symbolism or anything just because they don't want to share their practice. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to go to the grocery store. They want to go to work. They want to go to the movies, wherever they're going. They want to go to the park. They want to go to the gym. And they don't want to deal with that crap. They really don't. And even if they do wear a pentacle or something, when asked about it, they'll be like, it's just a pendant and move on because they don't want to talk about it. Right. And we also see this in, if you think about it, a book of shadows. A book of shadows got its original because, you're taking your beliefs, you're taking it and you're essentially putting it in a secret hidden place. You're tucking it away. You're keeping it to yourself. Now, and a lot of times with persecution, that was a necessity for safety. But at the same time, for me and a lot of people I know, it's just, I don't want to talk about it. So I don't, plaster it everywhere. Well, okay, I've changed because obviously I got this channel. I am everywhere now. But at the same time, if you come to my house, it's not overly decorated pagan. My house would look like a southern house with a bit of a I don't know, a nerdy twist to it, you know. Um, that's really about it. Maybe even a slight tinge of gothic twist. I mean, it's weird, but it's a southern home that's a little more, oh, Lord of the Rings, maybe at most. It's pretty boring. My house is pretty boring. Um, so yeah, it's that is a lot of the thought processes that a lot of people have on that. Um, let's see here. I got a few other things. This commandment was given in Exodus 20. It is part of the Ten Commandments given by Moses on Mount Sinai. It prohibited idolatry, uh, forbids the creation of any carven image in the likeness of anything in the heavens, earth, or waters, and also prohibits bowing down to or serving them. So, I mean, that's a pretty big thing. It's not just, you can have no images of no God other than me. It's not, you can't have any images of God. This is, I mean, it's a lot larger take when you actually dive into it. In modern terms, this could be overly focusing on someone or becoming obsessive with a hobby, media, or celebrity. There is a lot of people, in truth, like if you think about it, you actually make an idol of this hobby, of this person, of this celebrity. Um, we just get overly obsessed with something, and the rest of our life actually falls to it. This, I think, is really a good modern view of this one. I really do. Because that one, the first thing we talked about, don't keep any imagery just to avoid the argument. That's a matter of preference, right? I know a lot of people who they love to have genuine, thoughtful discussions. Fine. I did it when I was working. I would wear Thor's hammer or a pentacle. And when asked, I would actually rationally explain it. And I was in the Bible Belt and I never got any kickback for rationally, calmly explaining it and thinking, how can I explain this to make sense to this individual? But that being said, this I think is really the meat of it philosophically if we're looking at self mastery and self improvement. It's becoming obsessive, becoming overly focused on anything to the point you're putting it on a pedestal. You're making it into that idol. It's not specifically carved, or anything, but yeah. And I don't know if it still happens, but I know in the 80s and 90s, like it was not uncommon to see a teenager just postered with the bands that they spend hours and hours listening to and getting nothing done, making nothing of their lives and wasting time. Don't get me wrong, music's not a waste, but the way we did it, we wasted some shit. So um, we can really do that. Video games are a huge one. I know a lot of people who's lost a lot of time to video games. One video game I have admitted to losing way too much time to is Skyrim. Hell, South Park did a episode making fun of World of Warcraft and how obsessive people got over that back in the day. I want to say it was like the 90s, 2000 is when they did that episode. It's been a while, but it's, we can become obsessive. It can be anything. It can even be our work. Our work can become the thing that we worship and idolize. So I honestly, personally, for me, think it's that putting anything into that position where you idolize it, worship it in a way that is actually taking away from you and your self mastery and self empowerment. Um, let's see. Some interpretations are, this is actually where we get the concept that you shouldn't make an image of God himself in any way. Some people take it as that, as he is the creator, and we can't create something truly in the eyes of the creator. I've never read it that way, but some people have. Uh, yeah, and of course we covered the, don't create an idol for worshiping statues or other representations of deity or god. So yeah, that's actually there. I know Christians who don't wear crosses because they think it's a carven image kind of thing, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, like I said, I think it's that making something that idol is really the modern thing that we need to look at. Because when we do that, we are literally just taking away, giving our power away, giving our mastery away, and we're losing so much connection to the world and life around us because of that obsession. By and large, I view obsession as usually negative. I really do. Um, but there are some people who say, no, it's good to be obsessed. I don't know. That could be a discussion for another video. I agree. Um, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Okay, this is pretty much avoid using God's name in a disrespectful, meaningless, or false way, such as through swearing or making empty promises in his name. Can mean empty, nothing, or worthless. That's, vain can mean empty, nothing, or worthless, or to no good purpose. Um, this is kind of an interesting one because ultimately you're forbidden, therefore, from taking the name of God or taking up the name or bearing the name as a phrase in a manner of that would be wicked, worthless, or for the wrong purpose, right? Um, well, if we think about this, and remember, up there we said God is more of that concept of living in life and balance and harmony. And yeah, if you're saying life is worthless, life is empty, that would be it. But don't forget, we also said that in a lot of ways we're making ourself that divine concept, right? We're looking at ourself there. So again, we're looking at don't, lie about yourself. Don't empty yourself. Don't wear yourself to the point. Don't make yourself worthless. Don't view yourself as empty. Don't view yourself as worthless. Don't slander your own name. Don't lie about yourself. All these things, when we're talking about don't do this with God's name, just put your name in there. Don't do any of those things to yourself. And honestly, if you're doing this and we're looking at that original concept of yourself and the world around you, right? That would also mean you shouldn't be doing this to those around you. And though less complicated, we see this in Norse practice with, you know, keep your word, speak truth, don't speak lies. I mean, that's pretty much it. And speaking truth and telling the truth, not speaking lies and not slandering people. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's easy to do. But whether you're looking at this as the dogmatic version of, go up here and slander a deity, or whether you're looking at it as, just that philosophical, don't slander the self, the divine self of you shouldn't be doing those because you can tear yourself down. No one can tear you down as fast as you can. You get in your own head, you start tearing yourself down. But it also applies to, remember, we talked about that ego, don't be looking down on others. Same thing. This right here is also reinforcing that. This is actually one of the big ones where we start bringing everyone else back up too. Um, so there you go. In my 2 cents on it. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. All right. This one gets tricky for a few reasons for a lot of people. I've always thought it was pretty straightforward, but maybe not. The Sabbath derived from the Hebrew word, and I'm probably going to butcher this, I apologize. Shaval, meaning to rest or to cease, is a day of rest and worship. Observe the seventh day of the week. Saturday was traditionally, I want to say it was the Sabbath in Judaism. And it still is in some Christian denominations, if I remember right. Don't quote me on that last part though. Commemorating God rest after creation, his rest after creation, right? So how is this one complicated? I don't know. Philosophically, yes, we need to work. Yes, we have responsibilities. I did a video not long ago talking about rest, relaxation, or laziness. Um, it's okay to take a day of rest. I would agree with that. Um, take a genuine day of rest. And when it looks here and we're talking about, commemorating God's rest. Okay. Um, observe the seventh day of the week. Okay, that's easy enough. And I would say take that seventh day, rest, and observe yourself. Look after yourself. That self-care. Because again, we're supposed to be taking on that responsibility of self-divinity, right? Self-empowerment, self-mastery. So that day of rest is genuinely a day of rest for ourselves. And it's a day of meditation. It's a day of contemplation, a day of recognition Um, and I think that would be a pretty good habit for anyone to build. I don't think it would have to be necessarily, you know, Saturday or Sunday. You could do it any day. I know when I worked third shift back in the day, um, Sunday, Monday was my days off. So those would have been the days I had. Then there were other jobs I worked where I think it was Tuesday, Wednesday was my days off. They really sucked. It really crapped up my week. But those were my days off. That's when I would have rested, right? That's when you would take that time, rest, and contemplate. And I do like the concept to take one solid day to dedicate to you, rest, relaxation, self care, truly. Because I do agree, every day we should do a little something, but take one full day a week to truly rejuvenate yourself and to meditate, sit down with a journal, pen some thoughts, you know, where have you come from? Where are you going? I think that is a really good thing to do. Maybe spend it. And what does that mean? Maybe take that day, spend it with family, laughing, maybe have a nice dinner. There's a lot of different ways you could handle that. But I do think it's a beneficial concept. And, so you could apply that very easily philosophically to someone's life. Um, Honor your father and your mother. This one's been a stick in the craw of a lot of people. Honor your father and mother is a commandment often considered the fifth, emphasizing respect and obedience to parents with the promise of a long and prosperous life. Ugh. Yeah, let's be honest. Abusive parents, no, I'm sorry, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Deadbeat parents, no, not going to happen. Not going to happen. I would never try and tell someone to do this. But let's look at a little deeper than just the surface. Honor in this context means to respect, value, obey your parents. It also includes showing gratitude for their guidance and care. Okay. Now, part of that honor is, respect and value and obey your parents. Well, let's be honest. Obedience is a word that, I understand the concept of listening to your parents, right? It does make sense. It really does. And I don't think it's a mistake that most people put the respect and value before that, because honestly, why would you listen to someone you don't respect? Honestly, I wouldn't. So that is kind of a point there. And it follows up with gratitude for their guidance and care, right? Um, I mean, guidance and care is an important thing. And, I saw a lot of guidance and care from my mom, and a lot of it I didn't see until I was older. But, I've never viewed my mom as a deadbeat or a shit parent. I've not. She was an amazing parent. I was lucky in that case. Um, the promise is followed by a promise that your days may not be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving, right? So it's kind of a reminder to value those you love in when you're here, right? It is that reminder. One thing interesting that a person did, because I had a discussion with someone years ago about this. He's like, parents don't necessarily mean blood, because there's a lot of people who have absolutely wonderful parents that they were not born to, and they should honor those. And they don't have any way to honor the parents they never knew. And there's plenty of religious people who would never ask you to honor, some of these really awful people having kids. So it goes beyond that even. Many of you know I have a mentor that was like a father to me. He viewed me as his son. I have always shown him that honor and respect. And I'm lucky enough to be able to hold this one to both my parents as well, but I got plenty of friends that's not the case. But they still would be able to hold this to the people they do see as parents. And I think that reminder of appreciating someone when they're in your life and when you have them and what they do for you, even if it ain't much, they're doing, what they do for you is still something. I think that's pretty good, but I wouldn't extend it to the shit parents. Um, let's see. Practical application, respect and obedience, listen to your parents, try to follow their guidance, especially when you are younger, because you got to learn from something, right? Appreciation, show gratitude when your parents have for what your parents have done for you. There's a lot of people who have no gratitude for what was done for them. The roof over the head doesn't matter. They have no gratitude. Try to have some gratitude for what your parents do. Raising kids is not easy. I would never want to raise a kid like me. Um, Care and support. As your parents age, provide practical support and care. Help them out. After all they did for you, they could use a hand. They really could. Whether it's if they're moving, help them move. Whether it's they needed you to drive them to the hospital or the DMV or whatnot, help them where you can. In some cultures, it is tradition. The parent moves in with the kid. Straight up. They just move in, they take care of them while they're old. Don't really happen here in America, but in some cultures it is. It's kind of cool too. It'd be a nice little thing. But it's not for everybody. But being able to show some respect and support and help one another out, that should be easy enough. That shouldn't be really a question. And that's where a lot of atheists comes from. It's like, I shouldn't need a list of things to do these. I would agree, but then looking around the world, apparently people need a list of something because they're really just dropping the ball across the board. Hello, everyone. It's Drake. Once I went into editing, I realized that the Mage Minded Series look at the Ten Commandments in a philosophical viewpoint video was over an hour long. So I made the decision I'm going to go ahead and snip it at 5 for this week, and we'll pick up next week. That way it's in 2 smaller videos as opposed to one massive giant video. All right. Anyways, I hope this helps. Hope you all understand, and I'll see you next week. Take care.